our colleague, Dr. James Berry, Associate Professor of Neurology at Harvard Medical School, Mass General Hospital, who is really an incredible expert and leader in all things ALS, and specifically today we'll be talking about all ALS. James.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I will share my screen and get started. I'm very excited to get to talk about all ALS. Jeremy referred to this study. It's been a real pleasure. You'll see that there are many of us that are working on this together, and we'll get to answer some of the questions about this clinically important difference, meaningful change in ALS-FRSR and some of the speech measures as well. So all ALS is an NIH-funded network, which is built to run primarily observational studies and to create resources that will be important for the ALS community to do research going forward. And the network actually has two coordinating centers. One is here at Mass General, and the other is at Barrow Neurologic Institute. And Bob Bowser is the contact PI there. And you'll see at the end that the teams that are working at these two institutions are doing an incredible job of coordinating one network across two coordinating centers and 35 sites. And that's been a real joy for this to come together. As I said, there are many PIs that are working together, each bringing a different expertise to what we do. So in addition to Bob and I working on this study, there are 9 other multi-PIs. And I think we're really bringing a huge expertise and level of thought to kind of creating tomorrow's resources. These are the 35 clinical centers. They are, you can see that East and West are a state of mind more than a geography, but it's really named after where the coordinating centers are. And the sites sort of report into the 2 different coordinating centers. This is a list of investigators. These institutions have dedicated not only investigators, but also research teams that have gotten through a huge amount of network building in the first year and are now beginning to enroll participants. And I'll show you that. The way that this kind of comes together is that the All ALS Consortium really falls under the umbrella of the Accelerating Medicines Partnership in ALS, or AMP-ALS. And this is part of Accelerating Medicines Partnerships across diseases that come from NIH. And these have been incredibly successful at creating open science resources in other diseases. And we're seeing this happen as well in ALS. So AMP-ALS will pull in existing data and aggregate that data. We'll create shared initiatives across the disease, and also actually represents a partnership with NIH, FDA, CPATH, and as well as industry. Under that umbrella, all ALS is meant to generate prospective data and sample collections and allow those to be shared openly with researchers across the globe doing ALS research at a scale that we really haven't done before in ALS. So that's part of what's really exciting about this. So there are, again, the 2 coordinating centers, but there are shared protocols and what the equivalent of a DSMB, but for observational studies, OSMB, a steering committee. We have site monitoring for all the sites, and we have a shared data coordinating center and a single IRB that's run through MGB. So all of this is very, very tightly coordinated so that we don't end up with sort of 2 networks, but one network working together to create this massive scale. All of the samples from this are being sent to an NIH biorepository called BioSend. This is at Indiana University. It is housed there. There are other AMP programs that have biorepositories there. They're been a wonderful organization to work with, and I think it will be very efficient to get samples both in and out of the BioSend repository. So that's been terrific. All of the data from this will go to a new knowledge portal that's being established now through SAGE Networks and CPATH called the AMP-ALS Knowledge Portal. And all ALS will contribute data prospectively to that. We're working with those organizations to create that knowledge portal now to very specifications that have been laid out by AMP-ALS. Now, all ALS is going to enroll different cohorts and create different collections of data and biosamples. So there are actually 2 protocols right now through All ALS, and there could be more because, again, All ALS is a network. The first protocol is called Assess All ALS. This enrolls first people with symptomatic ALS who can participate with on-site visits or fully remote visits. And with fully remote visits, we use home phlebotomy to get blood. So there really is very little difference between the data that we get on-site and fully remote. A little bit, but not much. And we get the same samples. Healthy controls will participate in on-site visits. We needed one place where we could sort of simplify just a little bit, but we'll also have healthy controls through the Assess All ALS protocol. In the Prevent All ALS protocol, this is for asymptomatic individuals that may harbor an ALS-causative gene variant. And what I mean by that is they come from a family where there is a family history of ALS. There may or may not have been testing within that family, and the individual may or may not have been tested previously. All of those can be accommodated, enrolled, and we have protocols for sort of managing the testing and return of results, or not returning results if people prefer that. This will be done hybrid. So there will be annual on-site visits and then additional visits that are done completely remotely. So everybody will participate in both. In addition to where people participate on-site or fully remote or hybrid, everybody will be participating to give data through digital health technologies. So we have a speech app, which was formerly Oral Analytics, now Linus Health. And then we have an ePro platform called NeuroPro, which delivers surveys for outcome measures to people's email. And we have a way of sort of tracking that as well. We're also exploring an additional digital health technology that we could add in year 2 as either a third protocol or a sub-study, probably not for everybody to participate. The biofluids that we're collecting include PBMCs, whole blood, plasma, and serum. Whole genome sequencing is planned for what we're collecting. We're creating the consents so that those PBMCs can be turned into iPSC lines and therefore, astrocytes, motor neurons, et cetera. We're collecting CSF on a subset of participants. Every site is expected to enroll participants to provide CSF to this effort. And we're adding a tissue collection option in year 2. This would be for people to sign up to hear more about postmortem tissue donation so that we could have collections that line up. All of this will be organized and connected through global unique identifiers. This study has a number of innovations that allow us to build from prior successes. So very little that goes into this study is brand new because we're doing this at a scale that we really want to put in sort of tried and true outcome measures and approaches, but we do want to push the boundaries of what we've been doing in large studies. So I mentioned creating the speech bank. We're going to bank and then share recordings. And we put a lot of work into making sure that we have both the infrastructure, but also the permission and the ICF coverage in order to create a shared speech bank that can be shared under the appropriate data use agreement. We're using a more formalized e-consent for this. So for our remote participants, rather than using a off-the-shelf product like Adobe Sign or something like that, we've gone to Florence, who has really a more robust e-consent that really allows for a hopefully fairly seamless consenting procedure to kind of take that to the next level so that it's easier to track. This can be monitored centrally. All of the data is stored in a compliant way. And that gives us more sort of visibility into this from a central level. The biorepository is really built to make these samples available, and it's building on sort of NIH precedent from other studies. We have a website that is being built, and we'll have a way for participants to enroll through a patient interest form and be connected to the closest site to them or a site that can enroll them quickly. As I mentioned, we're using home phlebotomy. Again, this has been used successfully in other studies. This is not the first time that these things are being rolled out, but rolling this out for an observational study in a very sort of centralized way so that we can do this with great quality across the study is really important. And we're using NeuroPro for these digital ePros. Again, building on many studies that have done this in related ways, but I think in this broad way will be really exciting. And then finally, I think one of the things that is not so much an innovation as something that we're really committed to is really broad alignment with other ongoing studies. So all FTD has a similar kind of a study in the FTD group. There's a lot of overlap, as we know, between ALS and FTD. There's a natural history study in ALS. CDC has the ALS registry. Target ALS has an ongoing biomarker study. The NIH Brain Bank, we're going to align with and even incorporate a way that people could sign up to hear more. Precision ALS is a similar study to all ALS, but going on in Europe, and we've been working with the Precision ALS group so that we have data that can be shared across those two large studies. It's been a very productive first year. So there's been a lot of network building. A lot of the first year has been really putting together, how are we going to run this network? What are the SOPs going to be? How are we going to engage sites? How are we going to work together as these two coordination centers? And in the midst of that, writing and developing and implementing two protocols, one for assess all ALS, one for prevent. And I would also just mention that while there are studies that we're building on that have followed people who are who may carry a gene that is causative of ALS, those have been really smaller studies, either single or maybe two-site studies. And rolling this out to a 35-center protocol has taken a lot of really deep thought, and it's been just really incredible to see that come together to the point that we're now enrolling people. We've published about the network already, and I don't want to forget the fact that the sites have been incredibly productive at getting their teams hired and working on the All ALS project. One of the things that is really going to set All ALS apart is its enrollment. The idea is to enroll large numbers. I'll show you our projections in just a moment for that. And then the other thing is to try to enroll representatively. And this means from across the US, from states that don't have sites in them, inclusively, in clinic, remotely, from different geographies, different socioeconomic statuses, race and ethnicity, and people who are at different stages of the disease with different physical abilities. So we've really had all of this in mind, even to the point of making sure that our NeuroPro, the DCC team, Alex Sherman, Derek D'Agostino, have really made sure that can be used with eye gaze devices, again, with this real commitment to representative enrollment. And that's something that we're very proud of. So here's how we're doing. We have 20 sites that are IRB approved, and 13 of those sites are activated. And this started just a couple months ago. This is a process, but we see this moving along actually very, very nicely. Our goal is to have 21 sites approved by January. We'll certainly surpass that. Our goal is to have 21 sites activated by March of 2025, and we're on track to very much surpass that as well. At this point, we have 6 sites that have enrolled in assess and 4 prevent. Actually, I think it's now 5 that have enrolled in prevent and 7 in assess. Just this week, this has changed. And the IRB approval to activation has been within a month, which is quite good actually for a network like this, particularly observational studies, which are often a little bit longer. And we're just right about at our goal for activation of the site to the first participant enrolled on average. So this is where we are with sort of enrollment and activation. And again, as soon as we update these slides, they're out of date. We have 82 participants enrolled already. You can see that we're just right on that line, or maybe just a hair below it. The projected line in orange is very aggressive. I mean, we're looking at 2,000 participants enrolled over the next year and a half, not even year and a half, year and a quarter. Really, really aggressive about this. And we're really going to be pushing the sites that are a part of this, because what is really novel here is that we can get to a large number of participants and create the kind of resource that we haven't had in the field, turning sort of an uncommon disease into big data. This is just a little more detail on where people have enrolled. There is a website. The plan is to launch it by the end of November. It may get pushed into December. There's a participant interest form that's embedded where people can enroll that can accept data into REDCap, which is a HIPAA compliant and Part 11 compliant research tool. And it will help people find an ALS site as well. So in year 2, we're going to be launching quarterly All ALS webinars. We're going to launch the All ALS website, as I said, November, December. We'll complete the site activations. We're going to initiate the home phlebotomy. That's actually set to start in just a week and a half or so. We'll staff fully. So one of the things that we want to do to encourage enrollment is make sure that we have patient navigators at each of our coordination centers, as well as outreach managers and site coordinators to work with the site coordinators. There are at every site coordinators who are dedicated entirely to all ALS. And so having this personnel is really, we know the difference between being able to enroll people into a study like this and not. And then finally, I think, as you can tell, we're really going to be focusing on enrollment and sort of building a recruitment and retention and DEI committee, developing a community engagement plan, engaging all the site coordinators, as well as those central resources. And finally, we have an amendment to the protocol to sort of burnish off some of the rough edges that we see. I think it's very common in the first few months of a new large protocol like this to just see some places where we want to shore things up, make them a little bit more streamlined, and make sure that all our consent language covers any of the sharing that we want to do in the future. So we're putting that together. That's almost complete, and we'll make sure that that goes out soon. And then the rest of the year, the rest of what we're doing is really just enroll, because I think that's what's going to set this apart and make it a success. I want to thank a number of people on the team. The first is really, as I mentioned, taking the prevent idea of enrolling people who are asymptomatic, potentially asymptomatic gene carriers into a study and following them is really different than anything that's been done before. And the team that's been dedicated to that and the genetic counselors that have been leading kind of the effort about how do we give results back have been incredible in really imagining what that should look like on a national scale. And then I also want to thank the All ALS Coordination Center teams, really large and growing number. And again, every time we update this slide, we've sort of filled out the team more. And finally, I want to thank the NIH for their support and vision in putting together this All ALS network.
Thank you so much, James. I mean, this was fantastic. It's a treat to hear kind of the first kind of update here as the program just launched 1 year from now. This is going to be so transformative. I cannot wait to see where this goes. And thank you for your leadership. This was incredible.